Okay, you're on.
Sind jetzt gefunden. Es ist ein gewaltiges Mann, es ist für Shabbos. Such a special holy time. Extending Shabbos. And the very last moment of Shoev B'Tat. What it says, Rabbi Avadia, the prophet Obadiah, says, Yankov Eish, Beis Yosef Lahava. The house of Jacob is a fire, the house of Joseph is a flame that shoots out, and so too, the fire of Shabbos shooting out into the weekdays to burn out all the kash. Now these last few moments, Shoev B'Tat, the Shviyas Ben David Ba. Read today Parshas Tetzaveh. It's a big day Kodesh. Ahar Nechicha L'Chakad L'Sifores. You should make holy vestments, sacred vestments for your brother Aaron, for honor and for glory. And it says that Aaron should put them on. Well, Aaron also means to Aaron, of Aaron. The Kedushas Levi, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sashem, Rabbi Kedushas Levi, explains Chavlus Iferes Kutchabrichu Shchinte, and that Aaron himself were the big day Kodesh. That Aaron brought the presence of God into this world. That it wasn't just the clothes he wore, he was the clothing for godliness in the world. And that later, that's why it says Leharon, Lechavod, Luciferis, and then when it says put it on, just put on Aaron. And the clothing go on Aaron, but Aaron himself is the clothing.
Can you pick up the baby? I think he's sad.
The Indian, different types of clothing people wear uniforms. Maybe it represents their profession, and they think they want to relax. They'll put on casual clothes. They're out of the uniform. No, then they're in a casual uniform. They make a statement. There's a Pavlovian response that comes by virtue of the clothing a person wears. The famous story of the Heilige Rebbe Zishas Kusi Galenim Al-Kusir, the Heilige Rebbe Melech, his brothers Kusi Galenim Al-Kusir Omein. They put on their Shabbos clothes on a weekday and they proved their Shabbos Seudos. And they said they felt Kedushas Shabbos, and they asked the Rebbe Dov Ber, they asked the Heilige Izmitcher Magid. He said, "What's pshat? Is there something? Is this just all in our mind?" He said, No. There were two answers. One is that says, Hayam Rishon B'Shabbos, Hayam Sheni B'Shabbos. That each day has the chin of Shabbos in it. Another explanation is that in the big day Shabbos is Kedushas Shabbos, and so it wasn't just psychological, but it was the actual spirituality of Shabbos, the covet of the Seferis of Shabbos. The office of the Kohen Gadol, who wore these clothing, and he was supposed to embody and be the clothing, the Chavod L'Seferis. Aaron was supposed to be, like we said from the Kedushas Levi, the clothing of the Chavod L'Seferis. He was supposed to embody godliness in this world and bring God's presence into the world, both the hidden aspect and the revealed aspect. The whole Klal Yisrael. Now this is the office of the Kohen Gadol, of the High Priest. To bring that holiness down into the world. To bring that holiness into the world. The Inyan of the Kohen Gadol is a lifelong appointment.
Hi, Josh.
We know Gemara in Yuma tells us during Bayis Rishon, in the time of the first temple, over all the centuries that the first temple existed, there were only, I don't know, about a few dozen Kahanim Gedolim. Not very many. They were appointed in their youth relatively, and they lived long lives. In the time of Bayis Sheni, in the time of the second temple, there were a few Kahanim Gedolim who were great men, like Shimon HaTzadik, who lived long lives. But then there were a few who weren't. And year after year, Kohen Gadol would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. On Yom Kippur, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, where a place no one else was allowed, and only he was allowed to go in this special time. And what they actually had to do was tie a rope around him in case he died, because no one else was allowed to go in there to take him out. And unfortunately, every year, they had to take it out for many, many years in Bayis Sheni. Because he wore the clothing, but he was not the clothing. It's very interesting who we had there. We have in Pirkei Avos,
Go in your room.
well known,
Guys, go in your room.
Satmar Rebbe Skana Kehanim. We have several types of Shas Rebbe Skana Kehanim. Sometimes the most difficult sugyas in Shas, more in Shabbos, very well known in other places in Tyrus. Some of the most difficult passages of the Talmud are attributed to Rabbi Chanina Skana Kehanim. Oy, tatoi futin. Why was he called Rabbi Chanina Skana Kehanim? He was the vice of the high priests. Not the vice high priest in the singular, but the vice of the high priests in the plural. You know, in America,
Okay, go.
if in America the president can't do his job and he's gone, he leaves this world, the vice president steps in. But and that's how it should have been with the Beis Hamikdash also. If the high priest is gone and he has a Sagan, he has a vice high priest, and the vice high priest will be the new high priest. Now in those days, the office of the high priest was appointed by the unscrupulous oligarchy of Rome, the tyrannical oligarchy of Rome, who appointed the high priests over Judea and Jerusalem, as opposed to who was a holy man, who was worthy to sit in the seat of Aaron HaKohen, of his great ancestor Aaron HaKohen, Chavod L'Siferis, Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom, Oyev Sabrias, B'karpin L'Torah, the office of the Talmidim, the disciples of Aaron the high priest, who loved peace and pursued peace. He loved people and he brought them close to Torah. And there were men who were not worthy of that office, who were appointed by the tyrannical oligarchy of Rome. And they held that office, and it's a wonder how it could be. They didn't realize, they saw it happen year after year, maybe the first time, the second time, even the 10th time, but year after year, for dozens and dozens of years, over 100 years, that every year a high priest should die. Why would anyone want to take such an office? And yet they went every year. And they served their year, and that was the end. And who was really supposed to sit in that seat was the great tzaddik and the great scholar, Chanina Skana Kehanim, was worthy to that office. You know, it's interesting. It says in Pirkei Avos also, just before we get to Richaninus Kana Kahanim, it's related to this, and that was the shoyv of him. To give chizik also, Rav Nachman Breslover said, this is La'ir Keri L'Kohen Gadol B'Yom Kippurim. It's one of the Asara Nisim, one of the 10 miracles that happened in the base of Migdash. So that's also Rav Nachman Breslover said that it was Chusi Yigalainu Val Kol Yisrael Amen. He said there should be chizik for us. That, we can't and Simchan Al Nes, and we shouldn't expect miracles to happen for us. And so if we're not holding on a certain level, it takes a miraculous level for that. It's supernatural. You have to strive for that and try to make tikkunim, of course. And that's what the Yemei Shovim are all about, to make tikkunim, but not to be depressed and not to be despondent. It's an interesting thing. If there would have been,
come drink your drink,
that there was Iru Keri L'Kohen Gadol B'Yom Kippurim.
You poured way too much.
So then those Kahanim Gedolim would not have gone into the Kodesh Kodashim. They would not have done the Avodah. And Ruchaninus Kana Kahanim would have done it the whole time, and they wouldn't have died. So it's maybe also one of the Asara Nisim Shenazil Aposeinu, that they didn't have to put up with that a Kohen Gadol like that for Nachayur. That such a Kohen Gadol, he would have to go in to La'ir Keri Kohen Gadol. Nothing happened. He didn't have anything that prevented him from going into the Kodesh HaKodashim. And so he went in. And Klal Yisrael we got rid of such a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. It's also one of the Sarah Nisim. That's one of the 10 miracles. And so Reb Chanina Skana Kohanim, he came in and he finished the Avodah. And then what happened? He's up for the job. And no, news came from Rome. No. Don't worry, Reb Chanina, we got somebody else. Somebody else will do the job. And again, it would happen for a year. And you think, Reb Chanina Skana Kohanim,
in a minute.
He suffered so much.
In a minute.
Because of the tyranny of Rome. And yet he recognized, despite how much he suffered and how much he was persecuted, and he was not allowed to have the position that he was supposed to have, that was rightly his, he still said, Hevi mispal b'shleima shel malchus. Maybe he himself was an anicle of Yirmiyahu Navi. Yirmiyahu Navi was also a Kohen. Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, was a priest. And Jeremiah tells us we should pray for the peace of the place where he gets sent. Pray for the government, pray for peace, for the whole world. It's a universal prayer. We're not only parochial to our own people and our own faith, but we have a care for the greater good of the world. And so he said, Hevi mispal b'shleima shel malchus, to pray for the peace of the government, even that government that was persecuting, pray for them peace. But really, that they shouldn't persecute anymore either. That's also part of the peace, He said, Shalmolei Moira Ishis Rehu Chaim Baloi. If there was no fear of the government, if there was anarchy, people would swallow each other alive. And so Reb Chanina Skana Kohanim, who was persecuted by the Roman government, still said to pray for the peace of the government. But again, that prayer for peace, it says it should also be better. It should be a more peaceful way. The signet, the seal of God is peace. Peace that's connected to the Midas Yesod. Now in these last moments of Shovim Tat, Tov, Shin, Ayin, Vav, to make tremendous tikkunim. We're at the place of Pesach L'Mishar Be'ez Ne'ilah Shar. We beg at Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur open for us the gate at the time when the gate is being locked. These last few moments we can fix everything. Chayil Bolo V'Kienu U'Mevitnu Yeshenu El, that everything, even if we didn't pravzich correctly during these 8 weeks, even if we didn't conduct ourselves in the way we're supposed to, right now, this moment, we can chaparayim to fix everything from those last 8 weeks of the Shovavim Tat, and the koyach of Shovavim Tat is stronger than the Iber Yor, because it's the original tekana of Shovavim Tat, was Shovavim Tat. There's the earlier Makoris, even in Rishonim, Shovavim Tat of the leap year. So it's a tremendous koyach. We can daven to fix everything that was in the last year and pray for the new coming year for all kinds of good hashpos and shmira, and to be like Levitzah Bardishever, to be Melitz Toy. We spoke about the vestments of the high priest, the robes that the priests wore, the regular priest and the high priest.
No, don't do that.
And the koyach.
Don't stop.
And what it means to wear a garment, or to be the garment, to embody that which the vestments were supposed to embody. This great land that we're worthy to be picking up the tzotzes to Kedusha here, and we're worthy here to be picking up divine sparks in this great land in the United States. Received such bad news. I heard about, just as Shabbos ended last week, the loss of a man who not only wore the robes, but embodied what those robes were, l'chavod l'sifaris. It's like the Moshe Kohen the Gadol, also like the Kahanim Gedolim, and they had a lifelong appointments. A man who understood with an approach of originalism, also that's connected in a way. We talked about Bayesheni, what went on in the time of the Second Temple between the Prushim and the Tzaddukim, between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Often you'll read from secular literature that the Sadducees were literalists. They were the more conservative ones, but really the Pharisees were the more authentic, the conservative originalists, because they weren't literalists. There can be a strict interpretation, but there's an originalist approach and there's a literalist approach. Both recognize that Torah was min hashamayim, but the Tzaddukim, the Sadducees, did not recognize the Torah Shebal Peh, and so they were literalists without being originalists. Because obviously when you read the Torah, it can't be that there's only what's written there. There had to be some original ideas that God gave to Moses, which are clear. It's clear from reading it in the text. He says you shecht an animal, you slaughter an animal to be kosher, like I showed you. Where does it say? Obviously, God told Moses, and it's an oral tradition. It's a Kabbalah that's received. Ish mipi ish, one man to the other. And so that's the idea of originalism that the Chazal embraced. Chazal never really called themselves Pharisees, Prushim, but they referred to, but there were different types of Prushim, different types of Pharisees, but meaning that I don't even call them Pharisees, I don't call them Chazal. Our sages, the ones who upheld the originalist ideas of the Torah. Lafuki, to separate from those who deny totally the divinity of our Torah. It's a different story. Tzaddukim did not deny the Sadducees did not deny the divinity of the Torah.
Did you put the baby
in the bag? They denied the originalist ideas and took a literalist approach, really in a way to just justify themselves, and not out of piety, but rather out of laxity and most of the Kehanim Gedolim were from that party. In the American history, there was the fight between the Federalists and the Jeffersonians, the Democratic Republicans, they're called. Also, it was a fight that it was a different fight. Originalism was not was never questioned. It was obvious they were living then in the time. The question was a strict interpretation or a loose interpretation. And so the Federalists took the loose interpretation and the Democratic Republicans took the strict interpretation. Maybe we could even say, unfortunately, when the precedent that was set by Marbury versus even though it was a victory in that time for the strict for the Jeffersonians, for those who wanted the strict interpretation, but in the long run it developed a whole different thing, which Jefferson himself was wary of. That he feared that the judiciary would become a tyrannical oligarchy through this idea of judicial review, which was never in the Constitution. And the loss of a man like Justice Scalia, particularly at a time like this, the fear that we have right now, the loss of freedom. This was a man, Justice Scalia, was a man who stood up meaning when there was in the holy shtetl in Kiryas Joel, there was a whole argument about the school district and so forth, and how unfortunately the Jeffersonian ideal has been gone away from through the tyrannical oligarchy of judicial review. That still there was one lion sitting on the bench, like how Havdil, the Rav Hutner, in his hesped for Satmar Rebbe, he describes Satmar Rebbe as the last lion, of how Noach, he was feeding the last lion. He had to have a certain reverence and awe, and the loss of Lahavdil in the secular world. The man was like the last lion, upholding the ideals of Jeffersonian freedom, and such a threat like this of the tyranny of the judiciary we haven't had really since FDR tried to pack the courts, and we can be thankful that didn't happen. That was stopped, and now we have a fear. Here was a man who understood the originalist ideas of freedom. That's what brought blessings to this country. Because why is America such a blessed land? Because of the concept of freedom of religion, that in the Jeffersonian sense, of true freedom of religion, which is meant to protect the religion from the government, not to protect the government from the religion. And how Justice Scalia eloquently defended Kiryas Joel, even though it was a dissenting opinion and it didn't win, but later on it was worked out something epicizoi, but it wasn't really in the strict Jeffersonian way, in the originalist way that the Constitution intended. He said, that the Grand Rabbi of Satmar would be very surprised to hear that according to the to the majority of this bench, that somehow his religion was established as the official state religion of our country. That's, of course, that goes against the whole theology of Satmar altogether. But no, it's in the originalist idea of how, when the United States was founded, many of the states that ratified the Constitution, ratified the Bill of Rights, had official state religions. It was only the originalist idea that there shouldn't be a national federal religion. And that's what the framers of the Constitution intended. And the fact that someone who understood that was on the bench was a great boon and brought blessing into this country. And he was a man who was pious in his own faith. He raised one of his own sons to the priesthood of his own faith. And that loss puts a tremendous fear into the message of freedom. And so we have to pray and daven, having him spahal b'shloim shel malchus. We have to pray that there should be peace in the government, that our freedoms should continue to be preserved. Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, what happened? All right, so they went from the Hasmonean monarchy to Roman tyranny. It wasn't a big leap, but Rebbeinu Shalom, the Chazal say, the halacha is if a person was wealthy and he lost everything, that we have an obligation as a community to give tzedakah. It's the just and obligation to give charity to the person, that he should be returned to the state that he was before the loss, or as close as we could get it. To go from such a drastic fall and the threat of the loss of the freedoms that this country was built on, that made it possible. We don't have anything like that in the world. There's no place in the world where you can be free to practice your religion, particularly Judaism, in an authentic, free way, with choice, without the government going down your throat telling you how to do it, trying to. Nowhere in the world like that. For sure not in Eretz Yisrael. They have a rabbanut that's in charge of all kinds of things. And so such a loss, we have to pray like Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, mispal b'shloim shel malchus. It doesn't mean a smooth transition. The shloim shel malchus, and the shleimus of the malchus, is in the freedom, because we live in a polyarchy that's run by the will of the people, and to change that to tyrannical oligarchy that FDR attempted, and lahavdil, that Jefferson warned us about, is such a tremendous fear. And perhaps the koyach of that fear should inspire us to do tshuva, because Lamaisa, why do we have these freedoms? Why did the Kadosh Baruch Hu bless this country with these type of freedoms? So we should take and grasp on those freedoms to choose to be B'nai Torah, to be Erlich Yidin. Oinus Machmon Patre. If someone is prevented from some exterior reason, God says, all right, you're potter. You don't have to worry. You're not obligated. You're exempt from any obligations. Here we have no einus. Here we have freedom. And so we have full chiyuvim to be L'chiyidin. Baruch Hashem, we can gain the gas with the stramel. We can go out in the street, the Streimel and Bekeshe, and no one can tell us no. We have freedom of religion here. They asked Satmar Rebbe, why in Europe not everyone went with the Streimel, so why in America he pushed it? Because in Europe they didn't have the freedom. In America they have the freedom. And so in order to safeguard that freedom for everyone, we have to take the freedom and live as L'chiyidin. Yeah, I think Justice Scalia understood that religious minorities such as ours are really the canaries in the coal mines of religious freedom. Come on, Malka. And that we have here in the Hudson Valley, in Orange County, in Rockland County, in Sullivan County, groups that are linked to the Tzionim. It's very clear they're linked. It's very open and linked to the Wilsonian ideas of what they call liberal progressivism, which is neither liberal nor progressive in any way, but rather extremely regressive and tyrannical. And they're testing to see if they can beat us, these little groups. And they're very well known, that particularly in the Hudson Valley, and how they used their tactics of community organizing to be rabble-rousers and to get well-meaning people to try to fight against religious freedom. They don't even realize that the people who are really behind this and trying to fight against our freedom of religion want to shut down their churches as much as they want to shut down our synagogues. And the thing is, we have to look at ourselves. Are we living up? Are we to what God expects of us? Are we using freedoms in the best way? Because if not, so then God could take away the freedom. Just like we used to have 613 mitzvahs. We had the Beis Hamikdash and Yerushalayim, and Hashem said, "All right, if you're not going to do it right, I'm going to take it away from you." And He sent us into Golus, and then here we have, I don't know, a little over 100 mitzvahs, less than 200 for sure, that we can do. The